Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant Christopher Morris. On the 24th of December 1914, General Birdwood sent a proposal for the constitution of the Army Corps. It was originally intended to name the Corps the Australasian Army Corps, but the commanders on point preferred the name Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. The administration clerks found the title too cumbersome and quickly adopted the abbreviation ANZAC, which was adopted as a code name but did not enter common usage amongst the troops until after the Gallipoli landings. But the ANZAC experience that began at Gallipoli would go on to be a centre point of collective memory in Australia. ANZAC Day is Australia's most commemorated national occasion, and Australia's experience of war, particularly the First World War, will forever remain a major milestone in Australian history that can never and should never be forgotten. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. This evening we warmly welcome members of the Royal Military Duntroon and Philippines Officer Candidate School and Mr Peter Baldwin, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial and students representing the National History Challenge winners from across Australia. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private George Austin King. George King was born on the Isle of Wight in the English Channel in 1890. He was the youngest of 3 sons born to John and Mary King. The family lived on the Isle of Wight throughout George's childhood. He attended Sandown National School on the island before spending 5 years as an apprentice carpenter in Sandown. George also served for 2 years as part of the 8th Battalion of the Hampshire Regiment before moving to Glenelg in Adelaide somewhere between 1912 and 1914. King enlisted in the 10th Battalion in South Australia on the 26th of November 1914. The 10th Battalion was among the first infantry units raised for the AIF during the First World War and was recruited from men in South Australia. Most of the 10th Battalion had left South Australia in November 1914 as part of the first convoy heading to the war. But George King did not leave Australia until the 2nd of February 1915, sailing from Melbourne in HMAT Clan McGillivray. After arriving in Egypt in mid-March, King sailed to the Greek island of Lemnos to prepare for the landings on Gallipoli. The involvement of the Ottoman Empire in the war threatened the British interests in the Middle East, particularly shipping routes in the Suez Canal. The planned landing of troops on the Gallipoli Peninsula was part of a wider British naval operation, which aimed to force the Dardanelles Strait, capture the Turkish capital, Constantinople, and ultimately force the Ottoman Empire to withdraw from the war. On the 24th of April, Private George King joined the 10th Battalion on HMS Prince of Wales, leaving Lemnos and assembling off the Gallipoli Peninsula. As part of the 3rd Brigade, the 10th Battalion provided the covering force for the ANZAC landing on the 25th of April. This meant the 10th Battalion was one of the first ashore at around 4:30 a.m. Along with the other members of the covering force, King landed about a mile north of the designated beaches and faced a steep ascent over treacherous terrain under Turkish artillery and machine gun fire. He would never make it that far. Private George Austin King was killed almost instantly during the landing at Gallipoli. He was 25 years old. Following the initial fighting, King's will was discovered in his paybook in the breast pocket of his uniform and sent first to England and then on to Australia. The will, which was stained with King's blood and damaged by the bullet that had killed him, became a sensation in Australia as it was examined by the court in South Australia. Newspapers across the country ran stories on the will, describing it as a tragic relic of Gallipoli, and bullet-torn and blood-stained, and an ANZAC's will. Adding to the tragedy was the fact that the will had been made on the 23rd of April 1915, only 2 days before King's death. Although his will was recovered from the battlefield after his death, his grave was never identified, and his final resting place remains unknown. He is commemorated today on the Lone Pine Memorial on Gallipoli alongside the names of 3,267 other Australians and 456 New Zealanders who died on the peninsula and have no known grave. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private George Austin King, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support for the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.